Hello and welcome in this extra episode about placing big structures. So in this video we are going to create a road and then we are going to place a bigger structure here, and you can see that if I try to place anywhere a special structure, for example, I can't because it is locked. The big structure is here, and if I want to place another big structure I can, and here I can't because this is not near a road, but here I can place it here, here and here. Of course, this will be only with one rotation, but still we will implement a way to check for a structure that has width and height greater than 1 by 1. So let's get going. Okay, we are here in our project and we currently do not have an extra button. So let's start with it. We are going to enter the canvas in our hierarchy, our panel, and Ctrl D to duplicate this button. And instead of being a place special button 1, we are going to call it place big button. Okay, and this will be responsible for placing 2 by 2 structures. By the algorithm that we are going to implement will work for any width and height. Now let's rename the button and change its text. So instead of text we are going to call it place 2 by 2. Okay, now in the Prefabs folder in the project section of Unity, we have the structures folder. Let's open it up, and we can see that multi-cell structures. For this tutorial, we are going to only use 2 by 2 structures, so we need to fix them because I have made a mistake while creating them. So let's open the hospital, and we can see in the scene view, if you uncheck the 2D, that we have our hospital. Let's click the y-axis to center on it. And the issue is, you can see that the issue is that our placement spot is in the lower right corner, but we want to place it from the lower left corner, and we are going to check the position from 0, 0, +1, 1, 1, and 1, 0. So basically this is only for checking the grid, and we are going to use this spot to place our structure. So we want to move this spot to be in the lower left corner of our structure. And those prefabs are created with a parent, so hospital is a parent, and the cube and the hospital building itself are the children, and they are placed in the center so we can easily rotate it if we desire them. So for example, we can rotate the hospital, I think it is on Y and 90, and you can see that the building was rotated without us touching the hospital parent. Okay, so what we want to do is take the cube and the hospital, hold Ctrl to move them by 1, and my snapping is currently set in the edit, grid and snap settings, and if we open this up, mine is set to 0.25. I want to set mine to 1. So when we know that our snap settings are correctly set, we can select the cube and the hospital, hold Ctrl and move it using the red arrow, and now this is moved 1 step to the right. So when we select our hospital parent, the lower left corner of the building is as the default position when we want to place it. So this will make our life a bit easier. So now let's exit this prefab using this arrow underneath the hierarchy. Save this prefab. We can go to house 1. Again, we can uncheck the 2D view and just select cube and house, use red arrow and hold Ctrl and move it by 1. And now we can see that the house has the same position as the base position. Again, click this arrow underneath the hierarchy to save the prefab and let's go to house 5. Let's uncheck the 2D, select the cube and house, and use red arrow and Ctrl to move it to the right. Okay, so now our prefabs are ready to implement our logic behind placing them on our map. I'm going to exit the 2D view to not see the UI. I'm going to select the terrain and click F to see it. Great. So now when we place our hospital on the map and we set its position in its transform to 8 by 9, you can see that this position is this square on our map, and we only need to log the position above it, to the right of it, and in the diagonal direction. So so we need to add to this position vector 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1, and log all of those positions on our grid to set the position to be a structure so we will not be able to place anything else here or traverse it using a road and our 𝗏 algorithm. That is how it will work. Now, what we will need to do is, first of all, we have this new button, place 2x2. So let's open up the scripts folder and go to UI controller. Okay. Here we are not going to do anything fancy. We are going to just add one action. So on big structure placement, we are going to add one button. So place big structure, or place big structure button. Save it. We are going to add this button to our list by hand. Great. And now we are going to copy the last statement in our start method. So this lambda expression assigning the onClick event. We are going to paste it here. We are going to copy the name of our button and replace the place special button into place big structure button in both spaces, in modify outline as well. And we are going to, instead of calling on special placement, we are going to call on big alt space to auto completed. And we have on big structure placement. Great. So that's it for our UI controller. We can now go to our structure manager. I have it opened in Unity. And actually, we can first go to the game manager. So let's do that. Before I forget, we need to assign our UI on big structure placement and assign to it a callback. So in our game manager script, in our start, let's underneath our last statement here, type UI controller on big structure placement plus equals, and let's call it big structure placement handler. Okay, we do not have this method, so Alt Enter and generate it in our game manager script. We can copy the clear input actions from the below method, and we can copy the input manager on mouse click statement. And instead of structure manager place special, we are going to call place big structure, I think, or we do not have this method yet. So let's call place big structure. Okay, Alt Enter to generate it. Generate method structure manager dot place big structure. And now we can simply right click on it and go to its definition. And this is our newly created method. So now let's rename the obj to position. This will be our new method, but we need to refactor some of the code in our structure manager to cover the checks for our place big structure method. So what we have here is our get random weight. We will use it as well. But what we have here as well is the check position before placement. And we have here checked, for example, for the get neighbor of type, and we have checked if this is a road. Now, if we call the check on each and every field that we want to place our big structure on, so as I have shown you on our map, okay, we are going to reserve the space 8 and 7, so this is this position, and we are going to add one on X, one on Y, and one on both, and reserve all those 4 positions. Now, if we perform the check for the check road against each and every position, so unless you have a road around this building, one of those will return false, and this will mean that the whole check will return false. So we need to refactor the check in our structure manager so that we can avoid it. So let's go back to our script. Okay. And to easily refactor this code, we are going to call those 2 checks as the default checks, and this one, it will be road check. So let's create var result, or maybe return, and we are going to call default check. And this will be our new method. So Alt Enter and generate this method. It will create a template with the Boolean value as the return type, and we are going to cut out those 2 first statements in our check position before placement and paste them into our default check. And we need to return at the end true because we haven't returned it, and it will need to get vector 3 int position. Okay, now that's good. So we can pass to it the position in our check position before placement, and instead we are going to call if this default check for this position equals false, we are going to simply return false. And we are going to create the same thing for the get neighbors of type road. So we are going to call return road check. Let's alt enter, and actually we can add position right now. Position, and alt enter on it. And Visual Studio will generate us the method, so we can simply cut out the if placement system statement from it, paste it to our road check, and simply add return true at the end if this check fails. Let's save it, and again we are going to, instead of returning in a check position before placement, we are going to pass if road check position equals false, and we are going to simply return false. Okay, so now we have our both checks ready, and we have refactored our check position before placement, and now we will be able to use both of those checks in our new method for creating a bigger structure. So before we can do that, we need to have the structure prefab weights for our big structures. Let's create a third array. Let's call it big structures prefabs. Okay, and let's create big structure weights. Great. So we need to, in the start method, copy one of those statements, paste it below, and change the names for the big structure weights. So big structure weights equals special prefab select, and not special prefabs, but rather the big structure prefabs. Select prefabs weights to array. Great. Now what we will need to do is to implement our method. So let's slide it down when we have created our place big structure method. Great. And let's implement this method. So instead of throwing an exception, we are going to create int width equals 2, int height equals 2, and those will be the dimensions of our structure. Of course, you could pass them through a scriptable object or through any other mean that you want to implement your structure through, or even add them to our struct that we have created below. For us, it will be constant values, but the algorithm will work if you change them as well. So we are going to call if, and we are going to call check big structure. And this will be our new method for checking the fields for our big structure. And we are going to pass to it our position, our width, and our height. Okay. And if we click Alt Enter on it and generate this method, it will have the definition correctly set for us, so we do not need to type it. Great. And now let's implement this check big structures method. So here what we will need to have is a bool value near road. Let's set it to be false by default. Now we are going to loop through each space for our structure, and this will be nothing more than 2 for loops. So for tab int x equals 0, x less than width. Let's get down into this for loop, and again type for tab y less than height. And here it is pretty important that width and height you understand which is which, and appropriately add one to another one depending on the prefabs that you are using. So let's create new position var new position equals our position, and we are going to add to it new vector3 int, and I'm going to pass x as x, 0, and y as z. Great. So we could possibly rename this y to be z, just to make it more clear. Now we have our new position, and it will loop through each position that we are placing our structure on, if it is width of 2 and height of 2, we are going to start with the position. Let's assume this is 0, 0. We are going to check 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, and 1, 1. So 4 positions will be checked. And that is why we have split those methods for checking the road and the default check, because now we are going to call if our near road bool flag is false, we know that we should perform a check for a road. So let's say near road equals, let's type road check, and we are going to pass the new position. So at some point we might find that the structure is near a road. We set the flag to be true, and we do not need to check again if this is near a road, because we know it is. And if it isn't, we are going to return it as false from this check big structure method. And we are going to create another if statement. So if default check new position, so this check will check if we are not placing this on another structure, or if there is if this is on the map. And we are going to call, if this is equal to true, we are going to call continue, so check next. And if this is equal false, so else, we are going to call return false. Okay, so let's assume that we have found a position, and every position for placing this big structure is correct. So now we need to deal with how we return this new road, and we are going to do this by simply returning our near road. Since if this is true and this didn't return false, we are going to return true. Great. So having this check, we can slide up to our place big structure, and all we are going to do is copy the same code from the place house from this if statement, and we need to get the random weight from our big structure weights. We need to call placement manager, place objects on the map, and we are going to pass here not house prefabs but big structure prefabs. But this doesn't change the situation that our place object on the map in our placement manager only places one structure. So we are going to pass to this method width and height, and we are going to right click on it and go to its definition. And we need to refactor this method to take into account the size. So at the end, we are going to pass int width equals 1 by default, and int height equals 1, so that our old code will still work, while we can modify it to work with our width and height. Okay, so now we are going to leave this structure model. We are going to only place one structure model. So let's move it to the top of this method. Next, we are going to again create two for loops. So for x less than width, and for y less than height. Great. So in case the width and height is equal to 1, it will only find the position 0, 0. Again, let's create var new position equals our position plus new vector3 int. We are going to pass here x, 0, and y. Again, we can rename the y to be z to make it more clear. So we are looping through the positions on our map, and let's cut out those statements from below and paste those statements inside it. And instead of position, we are going to pass the new position in every of those statements. So what are we going to do is we are going to ensure that we call our placement grid, so place our structure. And this is the issue with this structure, because we do not have a special type for it, so we need to modify it in our structure manager. But for now, we are going to set on our grid the type on all of those positions. We are going to add all of those positions to our dictionary. So this is vital, because now if you want to remove it or have a system for removing those structures, you will need to ensure that you remove all those positions from your dictionary, because it will contain the reference on each position to the structure. So if you possibly click on the map and you want to access this structure, you can ask the dictionary, and on any of those positions, it will return you the same structure. And we are going to destroy the nature on all of those positions. So let's save it. Let's go back for a bit to our structure manager. And as I have said, we are passing the cell type and we are passing the structure here. So let's leave it at that. But of course, you can create a custom way to pass here the structure, and there might be special big structure and special house, or maybe just leave it as a structure and special. But for now, we are not going to bother with it, but do mind that this should be refactored in a way that you can pass what type of structure it is. Great. So let's save the structure manager and be sure to save the game manager, and let's go to Unity. Great. After everything compiles, let's choose our structure manager from our hierarchy, and do remember that we need to place here our big structure prefabs. Since we have 3, let's create 3. As I have said previously, we have a hospital, which is basically the special structure, but we are going to treat it as a structure just for the purpose of this tutorial. But we might want to add here a type to this struct, and we might add width and height as well, or maybe create even a scriptable object to store all those informations. For the hospital, let's set weight to 0.25, for example. For house, let's set the weight to 1, and for the second house again to 1. And now we should be done. So let's try running our game. And I can see that we have error, so let's stop the game. For sure, we need to remove the house, and let's choose our canvas. And we have not assigned our place big button. So let's assign it, and let's press play again. And now we should be able to place our road. And let's try placing our special structure. And this is an issue because I have set in the prefabs the transform. So let's change the positions inside the transforms of the prefabs for the multi-cell structures. Okay, sorry, my fault. So all of those should have 0, 0, 0 position. So now let's press play. And let's place our road. Let's place our structure big. And now you can see that we cannot really place here anything. Let's try placing a road. And you can see that we need to go around it. So our grid ensures us that we cannot place anything here because it knows it is a structure. And we do have one issue that if we press play and try placing a structure here, so in the last tile, we get this index out of range exception. So if we click on it, and if we go to our structure manager, this is line 116 in my script, we are checking the road check, and the road check tries to access the position that is out of bounds. So we have made a mistake in ordering our check big structure, because our road check needs to be after we have the default check. And since we have moved it, we cannot really use the continue statement. So let's delete this else statement and let's check if this is false. We are going to return false, and if not, we are going to continue. So now let's go back to Unity. Okay, remember to save your script. Let's press play, and we are going to place a road here in this position. Let's try placing our object, and you can see that must be placed near a road, and this position is out of bounds. Okay, let's try placing it here, and we can place it here but not anywhere near the edge. So that's great. So this will mean that if we place a road here, we cannot really place our structures here, but we can place a single structure of type house or special and place 2x2 structure where we have the space for it. And you can see that it was away from the road. Here we can place those structures. So that's great. It means that everything works for us. And this is the way you would implement placement of the structures of size bigger than 1 by 1. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. Now I would love to see you on the Discord joining the Sunny Valley Studios server, as I do have a game planned, and I would love to let you know when it is available and let you know when you can beta test it and help me improve it. So if you can, please join the Discord. I will let you know when new tutorials are available. The link to Discord server will be in the description. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. See you in the next one. Take care.